evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Motor City Mad Mouse Show. That's it. The Motor City Mad Mouse is in the house. But you know what? I have more people tonight in my house. Smoking Jeremy B making his first appearance, and you could be seeing a lot more Smoking Jeremy B. Welcome to the big show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And we have my regular co-host, George Eichhorn. Welcome back, George.
Oh, good to be here tonight, guys, and welcome to Jeremy. Good to see you again, my friend.
Good to see you. It's been a minute since we've done a show together.
Yeah,
A while.
let's say a little bit more than a minute, but good stuff. So, anyways, let's get to the agenda. We're going to talk about former Michigan coach Mike MacDonald, and we're going to talk about some unusual Big Ten matchups, and we're also going to talk about two games that will be postponed in MLB till Monday night. With that said, okay, the Lions are going to be hosting the Seattle Seahawks on Monday night. George Eichhorn will be there covering it for us. But former Michigan defensive coordinator Mike MacDonald has led Seattle Seahawks to a 3-0 record following Pete Carroll. So, Jeremy Ballrick, give me your thoughts about Mike MacDonald first and then the matchup.
I think Mike MacDonald is getting the most out of this team the quickest, but at the same time, they had two very easy contests to start off, and then they played a backup quarterback with Miami who hasn't shown he's ready to be starting material yet. So, they've kind of had an easy road to hoe. It was an easy road to 3-0. I'm not saying it's a fraudulent 3-0. I'm just saying I don't think the test here in Detroit on Monday will be so easy.
Well, as far as Seattle's concerned, though, trying to find a successor for Pete Carroll was not an easy job, but yet they go to Michigan to get the defensive coordinator who's actually worked under Jim Harbaugh. So when you look at the successor himself, Mike MacDonald, don't you think, though, that everybody thought he was going to be a good coach and deserved a head coaching opportunity?
That wasn't what I was getting at. I was talking
No,
about.
I'm asking you a separate question.
I think he was the perfect guy for this job. And don't forget, he was the linebacker coach for the Ravens before he came to Michigan, and then he became the defensive coordinator after
Right.
he fired Wink Martindale.
Right. No, those are separate questions. I know what you said initially, that the schedule's been a little bit light. They're going to face a hungry Lions team. The last thing the Lions want to go is 2-2, especially on national television. They're finally getting this newfound respect. So, no, you are right on par, Jeremy, with what I said. But you being a rookie in the journalism business, you ever heard of that thing called a follow-up question?
Sure.
Good. I just followed up with you. So that's it. I'll go to the guy that obviously has handled a lot of my follow up. George Eichhorn, Mike
Yeah.
MacDonald. Doesn't have a farm, but he has a football team. Bad joke.
He is following in some big footsteps. We know that Pete Carroll was a very successful head coach. I've liked Mike. I mean, he, like you guys mentioned, he worked under both Harbaughs, Baltimore and at U of M, and he's got very youthful appearance. I mean, you think he was a rookie head coach. He is the kind of guy they need, though. I mean, Geno Smith is a decent quarterback, but you need more than just Geno Smith. You need a whole effort. And I agree with what you said, Jeremy. I mean, when you look at that schedule, Denver, New England, and then Miami. Miami was a bit of a surprise, but not because on paper going into the season, Miami wouldn't have been a surprise win. But of course, with the quarterback situation down there, the Dolphins, and then you got the Lions coming up in Game 4 for Seattle. So, yeah, I'm a bit surprised that they're off to such a great start, and I do like Mike McDonald. I think he's got very good coaching pedigree.
Well, there's no question that when they played the Miami Dolphins, when there was Skylar Thompson, and by the end of the game, they ended up going with a guy we're all too familiar with in Detroit called Tim Boyle. So, I mean, we all
Yeah.
know about Tim Boyle. For those Lions fans that thought he was what he was, that's true. That's why he keeps getting bounced around everywhere. But now I understand Tyler Huntley could very well be starting for the Dolphins this week. Won't get into that, but yeah, Mike McDonald deserved an opportunity to go to Seattle, and for him to go under Pete Carroll. In fact, as I understand with Pete Carroll, he went back to USC just to coach, to teach classes over there, and he's back in Southern California anyways. I don't know what kind of consulting he's doing, but I don't think he's doing it in Seattle for sure. And again, you guys both were right. Miami quarter Dolphins were down to their second quarterback, and they're going to need another quarterback if they have to. I mean, we'll see what type of how Tyler Huntley does. You can't start with Tim Boyle, but let's think about the matchup itself. Okay, Jeremy, what do you expect out of that Lions and Seattle matchup?
I expect to see a lot more of like what the way we played against Arizona, more of a run first offense, set up the pass. Uh, Goff isn't needed to throw 55 times a game if you run the ball first. And with our 1-2 punch, I don't understand why they do it. Wouldn't. I understand that Seattle has shut down a couple of running games, and the only one of note really is Miami's because Broncos really don't have a run game yet, and neither does the Patriots. I mean, Ramondre Stevenson was bad that game.
Right.
But I think it's going to be a more evenly matched matchup talent wise.
Okay, that's fair. George, what do you think? In fact, what I'm kicking the tires of doing is maybe you coming on inside the pitch in for 5 or 10 minutes, giving us a live report there. I am going to consider doing that. I'll
Okay.
inform you of that later on. But what are your thoughts about the
Yeah.
matchup as it stands?
Well, yeah. I mean, I was really surprised they had Goff throwing that ball so much in the Tampa Bay game. But I'll tell you what, the Lions do have, as Jeremy mentioned, that 1-2 punch in the running backs. And you just have to use that, I think, as much as you can. Granted, you mix things up. Of course I know that, and I'm but their running game is such a good, solid part of that offense that you're like you said, you don't need Goff to throw 45, 55 passes, whatever a game, unless it's a big scoring shootout, as they call them, a
Right.
shootout. If they had against Mahomes or somebody like that. But this game is winnable for Detroit. They got to get that silly Seattle Seahawk monkey off their back. It's
Right.
it's it's gone on for too many years, and I think the Lions will be ready to roar.
Yeah, I know they've struggled with Seattle in recent years. I expect it to be a close game. I really do. I think it'll be decided inside of seven. I really do. Nothing the Lions have had this year has been easy. But Dan Campbell, I actually put something out there recently about, Brad Holmes having to address his unpredictable nature of constantly going for it. With Dan Campbell, you can't. He's going to coach the way he's going to coach. As long as they keep winning, he's got the best ownership on the planet because they're not going to bother him. You don't have a Jerry Jones or a David Tepper or anybody telling you what to do. He has Sheila Hamp Ford or leave him alone. Hey, you go for it. Break my heart. I don't even care.
What was her exact words? I'm going to let the people who make football decisions make the football decisions. Isn't that her exact words?
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
there's no
something to that
question.
effect. I mean, she's really become not only that, but she's a leader of that team, and the whole culture change, which we've talked about on other shows before, that we've seen in Detroit. It's just been remarkable under her ownership.
Well, again, the Lions right now, when you give Dan Campbell a 6-year contract, many people thought he wouldn't get through 3 or 4 of those years, but they weathered the storm, so to speak. And obviously, what you're seeing right now is now he's in year number 4, so you're already 4/6 of the way through that contract as well. All right, other things I want to get to is before I do that, I want to let everybody know that I am the author, by the way, of Lessons from the Microphone, and it just talks about mainly old school media versus new school media. Jeremy's read it, George has read it, and I encourage you to get a copy of it. You can find it at on Barnes and Noble, Amazon, and other sources. Just go to the South Florida Tribune website, www.southfloridatribune website, and we can go out there and get it. So put a lot of time in it. George wrote the forward. All right, onwards we go, and that's this. Can you imagine? Okay, the Washington Huskies at Rutgers, Wisconsin at USC, and Oregon at UCLA as a Big Ten game. But before I go any deeper than that, okay, Michigan defeated USC 27-24 at the Big House last week. Hello, everybody. This is modern NCAA football. Jeremy, is it the matchups are certainly they're going to be regular, but give me your take on what I just mentioned here.
I think the teams that came out of the Pac-12 have to adjust to traveling east, getting
Yeah.
used to the jet lag and stuff like that. They may have to travel a day earlier than usual to let that jet lag wear off, because you could see that all of those teams look gassed by the third and fourth quarters, and that's when the teams that are used to not traveling would take over.
That's true. It really is. I mean, remember once upon a time, you wonder why the Big Ten always struggled in the Rose Bowl because they're going east to west. Now, albeit they're probably for there we out there about a week or 10 days, but still, you're talking a short trip. Let me tell everybody an interesting story. Okay, George probably remembers this real well. I was covering the Lions, and I think it was against the Oakland Raiders or San Francisco 49ers, one of those trips. But I ended up going to what was it? I went to Oakland or San Francisco in the Bay Area. I came back and then I ended up flying with my ex-wife to Lake Tahoe and I ended up getting married. So you want to talk about taking that trip in one day, how much it could tire you east or west it is. But that said, George, you know what I've just mentioned? Okay.
Yeah, I do
What do you
remember that
think?
story. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. But yeah, it's a whole new ball game. Pardon the pun, but it's a whole new game for those former Pac-10 schools. So the Big Ten's expansion does take its toll, though. I agree with you guys. I mean, that travel is not something to take lightly. The only problem is if you go out too early, you do face additional maybe expenses, and I don't know how that whole works with the Big Ten. But you'd have to take the kids out of school maybe a day early, go out another day early. I don't know how that's working out. I don't think that's something they want to decide right yet. But I think that these matchups are, I mean, to a college football lover, to Big Ten, Pac-10 fan like we've been or followers, it's great. It is really great. And Michigan didn't get much of a chance to from the experts to win that game, but boy oh boy, they came up with enough of a game plan to do so against Southern Cal last week. But yeah, I'm looking forward to these matchups. And the travel, Michigan's got to go and travel out west, and Michigan State and other schools, Ohio State. So but it's more of a burden. I agree. It's more of a burden, especially when you talk about what was it, Scott, Washington and Rutgers.
Yeah.
You, yeah, coast to coast to coast. Wow, yeah, that's a
Well,
long ways.
that may be one of the furthest trips than you think about. You're talking about Seattle all the way to the New York metropolitan
Yep,
market. But here, you know what
sure.
these matchups remind me of? They remind me of bowl games, don't you? But now we have to deal with them in conference play. Update with the Detroit Red Wings lead the Chicago Blackhawks 1-0 in the first, and another update I'll provide Tiger fans, which they'd like to know, is the Miami Marlins lead the Minnesota Twins 3-0. Top of the third with 2 outs. Miami has a man on first. Why am I mentioning that score? Because you know what? If the Miami Marlins can beat up on the Twins a little bit, it just pushes Tigers' magic number a little bit further. So
Right.
great.
They were
Go ahead.
saying that the Tigers could clinch by Sunday if the Twins lose two and the Royals lose two, and they win three out of the four games they have coming up.
Okay. Well, so obviously a fluid situation, but these matchups are about bowl games. Is really what they are.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that because usually it's teams from the north and east traveling west and south for bowl games, and this is
Correct.
the exact opposite for these people. And also, what about the games in November and in
Right.
December that they're going to have, which those teams have never faced that type of cold if they got to play at Michigan State or at Ohio State or Illinois, Indiana, Rutgers, Maryland.
You know what? That's an excellent point. Every time you play these teams in Southern California, okay, you're playing them in nice weather, whether it's at the Rose Bowl. I don't remember the last time I've seen any of these teams play at the LA Coliseum. It's still a venue I'd love to get to one day. But think about it, they always play at the Rose Bowl where the weather conditions. But yeah, I'd like to see USC and UCLA play in the deep cold. Washington and Oregon might be able to handle it a little bit better, but yeah, USC and UCLA, excellent point. But yeah, you're talking about cold weather. We're going to stay on to baseball due to Hurricane Helene. Today and tomorrow's Mets Braves games have been postponed. The plan is for those teams to play a doubleheader on Monday before the postseason starts on Tuesday. Okay, Jeremy, what are your thoughts about moving those games back to Monday?
I think it's important to move them back and not have them be in harm's way with the hurricane and with everybody that has games playing. Why make another team move to a smaller school to make another team move to make another team move? It's easier to
Right.
move the date and get them out of harm's way.
Okay. All right, George.
Well, it might be easier, but it's very very difficult for the Atlanta Braves because they wanted to obviously draw a lot of fans and attention as they try to push their way into the playoffs, but Mother Nature had other plans, and unfortunately, there's no other room to make those games up. Now, that everybody might not remember this, but I think there's one off day, or is there two before the playoffs start? I think the playoffs start on Tuesday, but if the Mets and the Braves are in the playoffs, maybe they'll make it Wednesday to start the playoffs. I'm not quite sure about that, but it's very difficult. You turn back that clock. You turn that clock back to 1967 of all times, and the Detroit Tigers had to play a doubleheader last game of the season against the Angels, and they had to win both games, and we all know that they didn't win them both. Boston tweaked in and got the American League title that year. I know I'm going way back, but it's reminiscent of that situation that happened in Detroit, where it's extremely difficult. Let's say Atlanta needs both games to win. It's going to be very, very hard to get them both, especially the Mets are playing like good baseball right now, too. But
Well,
like you said, I mean, Mother Nature, yeah.
yeah. Well, remember one thing: the Braves have sold a lot of tickets for these two games. They really have. So they MLB saying, well, yeah, we get it. We'll try to keep them there because they were also kicking the tires on neutral site games if they had to do it. So
Sure.
I think that MLB right now is making a wise move. Yeah, I think everything should be all cleared out by Monday and play both games. You may have to be a little inconvenienced by the doubleheader. At least you keep your gate and your concessions, anyways. So there's a little bit of compromise on both sides. But listen, I've seen the Mets. I think I saw the Mets this year, but I see them every year anyhow. We were just so busy on the road, and the Braves. And let's face the reality: nobody expected the Mets to do anything. You see them
Well,
letting go Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander. They thought it was a fire sale, but all of a sudden, this team has come out of nowhere. They had a slow start, and the Mets and
yeah,
Braves are battling right down to the wire.
Yes,
yeah.
But
the Braves, the San Diego Padres, and the Dodgers are all real close together in their standings right now. I think the Padres are only a game and a half out, if I remember right, and they have a chance to win that division.
That's true. Yeah, I think one or two games, but they did clinch a playoff berth, ironically, because of a triple play against yours truly, the Dodgers. So,
Right?
Yeah,
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
that's an unbelievable point.
But
But
that's
but
a whole game jump, is what I'm getting at.
oh yeah, but you know what, Jeremy? On 108 Stitches Baseball Talk, I've been on. I've been telling you all along. I like the San, San Diego Padres. They've been a hot team all year round. They have Mike Schilt out there. It took a little while to get used to it. The first 100 game, not so great. No, I think they were like 41 and 16 in the second half. I've watched them play. I saw the way they hammered the Marlins too, and they hammer everybody. They've got some
yeah.
good players on that San Diego team. And don't be surprised if anybody underestimates the San Diego Padres. They're going to be in trouble. This is a good team. They really, really are.
Well, they are. And the only thing I don't like about the San Diego Padres are those awful City Connect jerseys. Other than that, they're great.
Hey, just remember that Padres were all about winning a couple of years ago too, and they never did punch their ticket. So they're in a very tough, very competitive division, of course, with the Dodgers. But I agree, San Diego is holding its own. They're a good team, and even though the fans wanted it either last year or the year before, they're getting the excitement right now this year.
Well, think about it. Bob Melvin wanted to go to San Francisco because he thought he had a better chance to win up with the Giants. They bring in Mike Schilt, who left. the St. Louis Cardinals because of philosophical difference. Now he's resurrected his career with the San Diego Padres. How is that working out? Padres are in. Giants aren't going to make it. Doesn't look like
Yeah.
it anyway.
Yep.
Well, there you go. So yeah, we do have a little bit of time for parting shots. So all right, Jeremy, go ahead and lead off.
All right. My parting shot is I think the Arizona Cardinals are becoming one of the dirtiest teams in football. They injured 5 players total, and I know of 2 exactly that were dirty plays. One was Cooper Kupp was in the bottom of the pile, and their linebacker grabbed his ankle and twisted it, and therefore Cooper Kupp is now injured with a sprained ankle. Now, fast forward it to last week. If you actually watch the play where Marcus Davenport got hurt, he had Paris Johnson Jr. beat completely. He grabbed his hand, pulled it back, and karate chopped into the tendon that snapped in Davenport's elbow. That is a direct dirty play. The other one was the defensive tackle stepped on Frank Ragnow's bad foot, lifted his arm, and karate chopped into his chest, and now he has a partial torn back. So these are 2 direct dirty plays. And if you even go a little bit further, if you look when Kyler Murray was running for that first down and Terrion Arnold was getting ready to tackle him, instead of sliding like most quarterbacks do, he put his helmet right into Terrion Arnold's knee. That is deliberate, intentional ways of trying to hurt somebody. We're not talking about hitting them in the thigh and sliding down to the shoulder and they're planting their foot. I'm talking helmet to kneecap. These are things that the NFL really needs to look into because if I can see it as the casual fan, you know the refs can see it in these replays too.
Well, if people like you talking about it, and a lot of other people are, don't be surprised if the NFL starts paying attention to what the Arizona Cardinals are doing. Okay, George, go ahead.
Well, my shout out's going to be obviously to the Detroit Tigers. They're loyal fans. I'm going to concentrate in the next couple minutes on that. So there are some people making comments about, oh, well, the stadiums are not full and the Tiger fans are lukewarm. No, no, stop that nonsense right now because this team was under 500 the great majority of this season. Fans had every right to be a little skeptical. The Tigers will have a double digit increase over last year. And you don't have to be a Rhodes Scholar to figure that out. I'm talking 10% or more. So they're going to have a 10% or more double digit improvement on their gate total from a year ago. What they're doing now is setting themselves up for bigger crowds, obviously, in 2025. So the fact of the matter that they're contending and hopefully will make the playoffs obviously will be a good sign. But unfortunately, unless they can really get some breaks, it probably won't be home games in the first wild card round because, as you guys know, the team with the better record hosts the games in that early first round best of 3. But the fans are doing their best to support this team. The fans have been loyal to this team. And yeah, we don't have crowds totaling, 40,000 every night. No, no. But they're setting the stage, is what I'm saying. They're setting the stage for some real good attendance next season. And Detroit's been a great baseball town. Detroit's a better football town, as we know, with sold out signs at Ford Field every game. So but they love their baseball too in Detroit. And hats off to those that have supported this team and those that are on the bandwagon right now.
Yeah, before we came on air, I was watching the Tigers and the Tampa Bay Rays, and I really thought that there was some great piece of managing by AJ Hinch. This is when you know you got a postseason manager. Kiter Montero's having a tough game. He pulled him in, I think, the second inning or third inning.
Third, I think it was, yeah.
Right, third inning.
Uh-huh.
Gunther came in. Right now, AJ Hinch doesn't care. He's going to go to that bullpen really quick because he's gotten used to the opener role to begin with. This is when you find out when a manager has, from a postseason standpoint, as we always just talk about Spark Anderson, Captain Hook. Well, guess what? AJ Hinch will be your new Captain Hook because he knows what he has on his roster.
Yeah.
That's item number one. Item number two, okay, if you're thinking about going anywhere for free agency, don't go to the Pittsburgh Pirates. And I'll tell you why. Rowdy Tellez was cut. Okay, mind you, and he needed 4 at-bats to collect a $200,000 bonus. Really? My goodness. 4 at-bats. You want to go out there and cut the guy? That to me was a bunch of nonsense. Let's face it, the Pirates haven't won anything in ages. Moves like that aren't going to get you any closer to winning a pennant. In fact, this team, the organization lost at 20 straight losing seasons. And I'll never forget Roberto Clementi's widow saying, please don't lose 21 because that would be Roberto's number. But this takes things to an all new low as far as I'm concerned. I'm not saying that other teams aren't doing it to avoid money. That's not the point. The point is you have a franchise that to me has done nothing. They've been irrelevant. And I feel bad for those Pittsburgh fans. I really, really, really do that they've been subjected to all this losing. So I just think it's a joke. Jim Leland managed that club for a while when they had Barry Bonds out there. There was a period of relevancy, but let's face it, now after 20 great losing seasons, to get in, sniff the postseason, to let Clinton Hurdle go, and now they're back to not getting in the playoffs again and having losing seasons. So shame on you, Pittsburgh Pirates. Okay, as far as I'm concerned, that is a bunch of nonsense. He had 4 at-bats, give him his 200 grand, and be done with it. Update score from Detroit: the Tigers 5, the Tampa Bay Rays 1. So, and I'll go ahead and check on the Miami Marlins score real quick, and then we'll close it out. Let's check on the Marlins score. And it looks like the Minnesota Twins. It looks like the Marlins still lead 3-0, but the Twins have runners at first and third with 2 outs. Anything else you guys want to add before we call it a night, Jeremy?
Well,
Well, let's think about this. At the All-Star break, the Detroit Tigers had a 2% chance of making the playoffs, and now they're sitting at 87.6%
Right,
after, what, 26 and 10 runs since August 11th?
right.
Talk about being the hottest team in baseball and when it counts.
Well, let me back up your point even more, Jeremy. I mean, when you think about it, everybody thought at the trade deadline they went out there and had a fire sale amongst one of the hurlers that got sent out of here was Jack Flaherty. So, but look what's happened. They've acquired Trey Sweeney, they've acquired some other pieces, and they're going to continue to acquire more and more pieces as well. So that so-called fire sale, go ahead, pick it
Port
up.
hit a 480-foot home run.
Okay. So
who did?
Spencer Torkelson.
Well, I know he's been I know he's been a little bit inconsistent again. I was hoping for better things out of him, but I'm glad to hear that he did something significant tonight.
so
The Tigers are obviously the hottest team in baseball right now, no question about it. Like Jeremy said, and you too, Scott. I mean, they turn things around, and don't for a second think that Hinch deserves a lot of credit because you're right, he does. And I don't care about antics that happen in Houston and none of that stuff. He's still a great manager, especially like you said for a playoff contending team.
Oh, 100%. You've got
Yeah,
to give a lot of credit to AJ Hinch because everybody wrote this team off at the All-Star break. Everybody, including the fans. And now you can't hardly get a ticket to go to a game versus you used to be able to buy the tickets for almost $10 a piece in the grandstand.
yeah, yeah,
right.
true.
Well, they're definitely going to be a hot ticket as time goes on. The main thing they have to do is get this thing done, clinch, and get a little bit of help. Basically, all the Tigers have to do is simply just keep on winning. That's
Right,
all they have to
right.
do. And and the task gets a little different once you leave Tampa. You get the Chicago White Sox, who are one loss away from infamy, surpassing a record that nobody thought was even possible. The New York Mets. 120. They're tied currently with the Mets. So that's what we have here. So great show tonight, Jeremy. Glad to have you on. Looking forward to having you on a weekly basis. And George, obviously, and I come on here.
Yeah,
And as we continue to build this show with the three of us, we'll even sprinkle in some guests here and there as well, which we're working on. But you're watching the Motor City Mad Mouth here on the No Filter Network. My name is Scott Morganroth. Once again, the Motor City Mad Mouth, Jeremy Ballrick, who has the show immediately after we get through, and George Eichhorn does too, but he has it with me. So, on behalf of my crew of Jeremy and George, my name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Mad Mouth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of the Motor City Mad Mouse Show. We will see you next Wednesday night. Good night, everybody.
Good